of American social scientists, and I'll just pick on a few of these. The great development economists of our era, Acemoglu and Robinson at Harvard and MIT, they have shown very convincingly that if you want to sustain economic growth over a long period of time, you have to have an inclusive society. Not a society where a few people on top are grabbing everything. And they assume that political inclusiveness and economic inclusiveness are the same. Well, let me tell you how to, and they make a lot of negative comments about China. It's a non-inclusive society. Well, let me tell you how to build an economically and socially inclusive society in one of these poor countries. First, you take the society's major asset, which is land, and you redistribute the land and land reform so everybody gets something. And then you educate everybody. All these countries did it, unlike, say, India, where a third of the people are illiterate and half of the women are illiterate. And then you give everybody a job, mostly in the modern economy. By building the right kind of infrastructure and having the right kind of rules, you attract labor-intensive manufacturing. Everybody becomes gradually a worker in textiles and computer assembly. Again, this doesn't happen in a place like India or the Philippines because they're incapable of building the infrastructure and enforcing the rules in a way that is attractive to locate those textile companies and computer companies there. And then, who are the major beneficiaries of all these jobs? Women. You go to a textile company or a computer assembly company, and you have 11 Taiwanese guys and 8,000 Chinese women. And it's still very unfair that it's 11 Taiwanese guys, but most of the employees are women. In traditional society, it was all agriculture, and the only thing that counted was muscle power, and the men had somewhat bigger muscles, so it was very patriarchal. These women go 500, 1,000, 1,500 miles to get these jobs. First year they have a rough time. Second year on, there's a whole literature on this. You start feeling, the only thing that's going to make me succeed is me, and I'm going to succeed, and it's the women who end up exposed to modern society. And it's the women who end up with a little nest egg that can be the down payment on a home. And this shifts the whole balance of society. There are feminists who are writing about the remaining problems of women in Chinese society, which are very severe. But if you compare with India, where these things don't happen, the difference is dramatic. And on all the scales of the World Bank and the United Nations, Chinese women come out very high. I'll give you one indicator of how things have changed. The woman used to have to bring a dowry in order to get married. Now the man has to prove that he has an apartment. She won't date you unless you have an apartment. Very fundamental. And then you give everybody a home. Guess which country in the world has the highest rate of home ownership? China, 85%. The US varies between 62 and 64%. And then you have a great property price inflation. Again, Japan has experienced this, Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, and China's probably just peaking out. These pieces of property that everybody has become very valuable. But everybody ends up with a stake in society. That's an inclusive society. On the other hand, you hold an election in a country of landlords and peasants. The landlords get together, they get elected, and they screw the peasants. India, you have great Indian institutes of technology, but half the population doesn't get educated. You have world-class hospitals, and the same is true in the Philippines and Thailand. The peasants don't have any money to contribute to politicians. They don't know how to organize. They get left out. The world-class hospitals are for the elite. Your kid has about 5 or 6 times the chance of dying before he's 1 year old in India than in China. And the mother has a much higher chance, a lot higher chance of dying. So this is an inclusive society. They're fixing their environment. They're digging out a very deep hole. But unlike India, they're dealing with it. And so on the other major issues. So as in Korea and Taiwan and Singapore,